Atheism 101. I'm basically going to talk about 3 different categories or titles that people like to put themselves into. And they are theists, atheists, and agnostics. The first one that's important to understand before we go on to the other two is, what is a theist? A theist is a person with belief in the existence of a god or gods. So it's a noun, and don't worry about God not being capitalized there. I'm not using it as the name of a specific character. I'm using it as a type of being, which I've actually defined below. A god is a superhuman being or spirit that is worshipped as having power over nature or human forces, also known as a deity. So if you believe that such a creature exists, then you are a theist. Doesn't matter what kind of theist you are, whether you're Christian, Muslim, whatever. All falls under the same category. And the definition given here for God isn't necessarily everyone's interpretation, but it is basically the general sense of what everyone means when they say the word God. So an atheist is, for some reason, a lot more confusing term, as a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of a god or gods. I know it's confusing. I know why it's confusing. A lot of people read disbelief to mean the same as, or disbelief in the existence of a god to mean the same thing as belief that gods do not exist. They're not the same thing. It's a semantical thing, and the very, very simplified definition is that an atheist is not a theist. So a person can not have a firm belief that a god exists. A person can go about their life without ever even thinking of a god. A person can go about their life without even knowing what a god is, if they were raised in a very, very isolated area. So not knowing of any kind of concept, not believing in this concept, makes you an atheist. A lot of atheists also have the firm belief that a god does not exist. That's not because they're atheists, that's another belief that they hold in addition to their lack of belief in a god. I know it's confusing. Ask me about it if you want to. I'll try and explain it in a better way. Right now I'm going to move on. Agnostic is usually considered a third in-between category, and I didn't give the definition of the way that people use it as a title. I gave the definition of the actual word. It's an old word, people don't use it anymore. It means having a doubtful or non-committal attitude towards something. For example, I was very agnostic about my test this morning. I did not know any of the answers. Ugh. So agnostic, right, I have that it's an adjective, it's a describing word. And the word that it describes is a noun. I said before that theist and atheist are nouns. Those are the words that agnostic is typically used to describe. People who identify as agnostic are almost always either an agnostic theist or an agnostic atheist. It is an abbreviation for those longer titles. So if you believe that there is a God, but maybe you're not sure about the details of that belief, you're not sure why you have that belief or anything about, you haven't really firmed up your opinion or your position, you might consider yourself an agnostic theist. That type of person is a lot less common than an agnostic atheist. Someone who believes maybe we can't really know whether a God exists. Why are we even trying to, claim that they do when we don't know, can't prove for certain whether they do or don't? So that's the more common position of an agnostic. They're just using the term agnostic to be short for I am an agnostic atheist, meaning I am not a theist. Remember, atheist is not a theist, but I don't believe one way or the other. Sorry. One more. What an atheist is not. There are so many misconceptions about atheism. I just wanted to make it really, really clear. The first one's kind of ridiculous. A Satanist or a devil worshiper is someone who believes in the devil and worships them, praises them. I don't do that, and I'm an atheist. There are a lot of people who don't worship Satan, who are atheists, and also a lot of devil worshippers also believe in the god. If they believe in the devil, they usually go together. So that's not atheism at all. Atheists are not anti-religious or anti-theists. A lot of atheists support the right to freedom of religion. A lot of people who are atheists get along very well with religious people. I have a lot of friends who are religious. I dated a guy who was religious. Didn't really care. It didn't really matter. And then anti-theist means, anti-theist is the title for I believe firmly that a god does not exist. That's an anti-theist. So an anti-theist is an atheist, but an atheist is not necessarily an anti-theist, if that makes sense. Okay, moving on. Immoral or unmotivated to be a good person. Whether or not you believe in God has nothing to do with your morals. There is no book of moral code like there is in a religion like Christianity. So you can have a moral atheist, you can have an immoral atheist, everyone is different. There's no dogma that we all follow. There are some trends, some generalizations that you might be able to make, but that would be stereotyping and judgment, and you shouldn't do that to people, so don't. A lot of people believe or assume that atheists are depressed because they believe there's no meaning to life. Of course, there can be atheists who are depressed, but that's not true necessarily for all atheists. A lot of people just derive their meaning from other sources, such as maybe their job, or their children, or their spouse, or their family, stuff like that. People who hate God. Atheists do not hate God because atheists do not believe God exists. So why would we have feelings towards something that doesn't exist? That's like saying that I hate leprechauns. God damn it, they are always getting into my stuff. I have no reason to hate God. I don't believe he exists. I have to believe in the existence before I can have an emotional response toward anything. So, people who hate God are theists because they believe that a God exists for them to hate. Un-American, and this is often directed towards, obviously, American atheists. Sure, a lot of the founding fathers were Christian. Big whoop. A lot of the founding fathers had slaves. That doesn't mean you're un-American if you don't have slaves. You see my point? It's not un-American to be an atheist. A lot of atheists who are in America believe firmly in rights and freedoms and the American dream and patriotism. I mean, they're Americans, get over it. And then the stereotype that atheists are scientists or are people who are obsessed with science. I totally fit the stereotype. I love science. I'm a science major. But that doesn't mean it's true for all atheists. There are some worldviews, I guess you would call it, some lifestyles that involve things like spirits or, I don't know, spells, and I really can't name very many. But you don't have to derive your atheism or your lack of belief from science. You can just not believe because you grew up in a Christian household and your family didn't make sense to you. What they were telling you didn't make sense, so you didn't believe them. Those people can have nothing to do with science. And the reason we get the stereotype is because the people who are debating you on YouTube and the people who are making a lot of noise are usually the ones that care about science. And although I think that's great, we don't represent everyone. We don't represent all atheists. And not everyone is like that. A lot of atheists are kind of in the closet. They don't really want to be too outgoing or express pride in their beliefs, or lack of belief, for whatever reason. So don't undermine their presence as well.